On my main channel today, I did a video about how the far left opposes science even when they believe the science is true. And after I published the video, I kind of felt like I didn't do a good enough job explaining that point. So I've decided to do a little bit more in-depth exposure on the subject. The first thing I want to say that I think maybe I didn't point out accurately. In the article from Vox, they argue that they believed if they did a study on materialism within the Jewish community, they would find evidence to suggest it was true, which to me was rather shocking. That was their argument. But they said that it was scientifically empty and morally bankrupt to do because of things that have happened in the past. And what I realized was they really do believe that there's some... This is not, look, I don't want to say this is the opinion of all of Vox. It was one op-ed from outside contributors. But Vox actually published an article that said, yes, they believed that Jewish people were materialistic, and I didn't know how to, I admit, I was sitting there processing this information for a little while, confused as to what they were trying to say. And then I realized something, because I believe it was Bernie Sanders and Noam Chomsky who said something similar to this, that even though we know these things are true, we shouldn't address them because of political reasons. And then I saw something from Ezra Klein. He said the same thing in an op-ed on the same subject within the same time period, that if we want to protect the individual, we should avoid these types of conversations, which said to me that the left knew these things, or I'm sorry. The left believes these things are true because I'm not someone who believes, oh my, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I disagree with Vox in their article assessing that there's some kind of materialism inherent to Jewish people. I can't believe that is attributed to Vox, but I don't agree with it. But their whole argument is that while it's true, it's morally wrong to investigate. And so I wanted to show you just how insane the mainstream conversation around race really is. Listen, for all of you great fans of the videos I make, you know that Mr. Poole is a mixed race person. And there have been jokes made by people like Brett Weinstein that I am a mixed race supremacist. A joke. The idea being that if everyone is so concerned about like white supremacy and all that, but I am not white, or I should say I am mixed because I am part white, then I am a mixed race supremacist. It's a joke. But I have this article you've been staring at. Diverse parental genes lead to taller and smarter children, finds extensive study. Let me just point this out. This article from The Guardian says in no uncertain terms that it is the genes which lead to smarter children. Finds extensive study. The survey of 350,000 people across 4 continents did not, however, confirm a belief of a link between genetic variety and high cholesterol or blood pressure. 350,000 people across 4 continents is a heck of a lot of people to assert that genetics can lead to smarter children. Now, while the Vox article that I showed in my main channel does say they believe at least partially that people can inherit IQ, they said they didn't believe there was a correlation between IQ disparity between races and genetics. Which is strange then that we have this article from The Guardian which asserts just that genes from different parents can lead to smarter children. Now, I facetiously call myself a mixed race supremacist, but there is something known as hybrid vigor, which may not relate the same to humans as it does to animals, but the general idea is that a wider gene pool, a larger gene pool, leads to more robust and stronger offspring and progeny, whatever you want to call it. And we have this study from The Guardian that says, diverse parental genes. Essentially, there have been numerous articles that argued race mixing leads to stronger, smarter, taller children, which is interesting to me as to why that's the case. But there's a reason why I'm hammering this into you right now, how they say genes. Genes lead to smarter children. Okay, we've concluded that. Now let's read the story. The children of parents who are more distantly related tend to be taller and smarter than their peers, according to one of the largest studies to date into genetic diversity. The study suggests that height and intelligence may be increasing as a growing number of people are marrying from more distant parts of the world. It looked at the genetic background and health of more than 350,000 individuals from around 100 communities across 4 continents. Researchers found the more distantly related an individual's parents were, the taller they tended to be, the higher they scored on cognitive tests, and the better their levels of educational attainment. However, the study found no link between genetic diversity and high blood pressure or cholesterol level, which had been suggested previously. Nathan Richardson, head of molecular and cellular medicine at the Medical Research Council, which funded the study, said, "Most people would believe a diverse gene pool is a good thing, but the discovery that height is associated with diversity wouldn't have been foreseen." It is true, according to The Guardian, that your genes will play a role in your intelligence. And then we have this wonderful article from Vox, which says there's still no good reason to believe black-white IQ differences are due to genes. Now listen, I am not here to argue this Vox article is wrong, simply that these two articles contradict each other. I am not a scientist, and I am not here to make the assertion that this is even true. In fact, I was shocked to find that Vox was I didn't know this. Vox has numerous articles that straight up say, so does the New York Times, yes, they are saying that Vox believes white people are scoring higher on IQ tests than black people. And it says in this in the article, these writers say IQ exists, that it predicts many life outcomes, that there is a gap between black IQ scores and white IQ scores, that IQ is at least partly heritable, but they reject the conclusion that Murray and Harris say is virtually inescapable, that it follows that black-white difference in IQ must be partly genetic. Now, I actually think this is kind of fair, but I feel like they're dancing around the issue. It would be silly to make any conclusion in science technically. There are going to be people on both ends of the spectrum that make conclusions, and people in the middle will typically just have ideas. I've always been someone who's felt that it's better to have ideas than to believe entirely. Actually, I think they talk about this in Dogma. Ideas are open-ended. You have an idea you think may or may not be true, and you're willing to investigate that idea, but beliefs are hammered in. What I found interesting about this, as I did this research, is that it's interesting to me to see that Vox is going to argue there's no good reason. Well, I would imagine that there is a good reason to believe that there is going to be genetic differences in IQ when The Guardian put out a story 2 years before Vox arguing that mixed race people have, or not necessarily mixed race people, but the more genetically diverse, more distant their parents are, the smarter they become. So let's see, Dr. Peter Joshi at the University of Edinburgh and a co-author of the paper said, "Our research answers questions first posed by Darwin as to the benefits of genetic diversity. Our next step will be to hone in on the specific parts of the genome that most benefit from diversity. The study published in the journal Nature used genetic data to look for instances of when people had inherited identical copies of genes from both their mother and their father, an indicator that their ancestors were related. They then compared this relatedness measure to 16 biomedical traits. Only 4 traits, height, lung capacity, general cognitive ability, and educational attainment, were correlated with genetic diversity." I want to stress again, I'm not a scientist. I don't know if this is true or not. I can sit here and look at this data, and there's a reason why I'm more likely to say I have an idea of what might be true as opposed to what I know to be factually correct. And this is why I'm a centrist, because I don't believe I know everything, and I don't believe even the things I've read are 100% true. In this particular circumstance, we have The Guardian saying this study found this to be true. And it's interesting because this article is talking about, to an extent, race mixing, of which I am very proud of my multi-ethnic background. But the idea that I don't know if I can agree that I am taller or smarter simply because this is true. I'm shorter than my dad. I'm taller than my mom. So maybe it's not always true for everyone. I don't know. But to see that Vox has an article that talks about there's no good reason to believe this, well, I'd imagine there's a good reason, maybe not to believe that differences between racial groups, sure, so maybe that's fair. But what's disturbing to me is their official assessment at the bottom when they talk about Jewish people. And it's the weirdest damn thing to me to see Vox doing this. I find it to be entirely ridiculous and incorrect. And there's another thing I want to point out in this. Let me give you my the reason for this video. I'm not here to talk about like race realism or racism or things like that. I'm strictly trying to point out the political paradox within racial science. We have this article from The Guardian, "The Unwelcome Revival of Race Science. Its defenders claim to be standing up for uncomfortable truths, but race science is still as bogus as ever." Perhaps that's true, but Guardian, When you put out an article saying that diverse parental genes lead to taller and smarter children, and then put out another article saying race science is unwelcome and it's bogus, I'm not sure I quite understand the editorial stance of The Guardian. This is what, and this article, The Unwelcome Revival of Race Science, from this year. The other article is from 3 years prior. I am absolutely confused. I have no idea what is even socially acceptable or true when you are going to put out articles that repeatedly say racial intelligence stuff, not real, but then put out an article saying, oh, but if people, mix race and have, not necessarily mixed race, but when people have diverse parents, they say diverse parental genes, they're smarter children. How does that work? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the science, but the idea to me would be the bigger the gene pool, the smarter the kids. And if genes lead to taller, smarter children, that would mean there is a good reason to believe that genes play a role in intelligence. And then the fact that I just want to end with this ridiculous paradox of Vox is the idea that they mention they really do believe that materialism, it's nearly certain that someone would, okay, they are saying right here, you might try to avoid the question by saying materialism might not be heritable, except that it nearly is certain it would be if someone bothered to check. This article from Vox argues that this person believes Jewish people are more likely to inherit some kind of drive for materialism, but the reason they say it's scientifically empty and morally bankrupt. Do we avoid science for moral reasons? Because we don't have a conclusion to the science, should we ignore this? The idea is, if we did the study, so what? What would we really learn and why would we benefit from it? We probably wouldn't. It could actually cause problems and rifts in our society. And thus, it is morally wrong to do so. But is that any reason to convince someone of something not being true? This article from Vox insinuates it is true. So if there's someone who doesn't understand what you're really talking about, you've just told them it's true. Anyway, I'm not going to prattle on too much more because now I'm going to do another video talking about millennial men getting married and my thoughts on that as we talk about this idea of genetic diversity and things of that nature. So stick around, I've got another video in just a few minutes.